Number 1. Darth Bane to Darth Zannah. Picture this. 1,000 years before Luke Skywalker even existed, the Sith were basically running their organization like a chaotic group project where everyone wanted to be the team leader. Enter Darth Bane, the Sith Lord, who looked at this mess and said, "Yeah, this isn't working." Here's what we know for certain from canon. Bane lived during an era when the Sith were numerous, fighting alongside each other in massive armies against the Jedi. The Brotherhood of Darkness, led by figures like Lord Khan, believed in strength through numbers. But Bane saw the fatal flaw. Too many Sith meant constant infighting, backstabbing, and ultimately, weakness. The Sith were literally defeating themselves through their own treachery. After witnessing how Sith plans were constantly undone by internal scheming, Bane survived the destruction of the Sith Order around 1,000 years before the Clone Wars. From the ashes of this devastation, he created his revolutionary doctrine, the Rule of Two: one master to embody power, one apprentice to crave it. No more, no less. The genius of this system? It channeled the Sith's natural tendency toward betrayal into a mechanism for growth. Each apprentice would eventually grow strong enough to overthrow their master, ensuring that each generation of Sith would be more powerful than the last. It's like the galaxy's most twisted performance review system. If you can kill your boss, you get their job. Bane took on an apprentice named Darth Zannah, training her to carry forward his teachings and the Rule of Two. Together, they would work from the shadows, slowly plotting the downfall of the Jedi Order and the Republic over centuries. When Master Yoda visited Moraband, the ancient Sith homeworld, also known as Korriban, during the Clone Wars in 19 BBY, he encountered what appeared to be Bane's spirit, a fiery specter that emerged from black dark side smoke within an ancient tomb. This apparition, voiced by Mark Hamill himself in a delicious bit of irony, attempted to tempt Yoda to the dark side. The specter claimed Yoda could be his apprentice, trying to exploit the Jedi Master's fears during his spiritual journey to learn the secret of immortality. But Yoda, wise as ever, dismissed the vision as merely an illusion with nothing to teach him. When Yoda refused to give in to fear, the very emotion that feeds the dark side, the screaming specter was pulled back into the sarcophagus and vanished. Was this truly Bane's spirit, somehow tethered to his tomb through dark side techniques? Or was it merely a manifestation created to test Yoda? Canon leaves this deliberately ambiguous, but what's clear is that Bane's influence persisted long after his death. His tomb on Moraband stands as a monument to his transformation of the Sith, from a numerous but self-destructive cult into a focused engine of revenge that would ultimately succeed in destroying the Jedi Order and conquering the galaxy. Talk about leaving a lasting legacy. Number 2. Darth Zannah to Darth Who. Darth Zannah is where canon gets mysteriously quiet, like trying to find details about that one co-worker who supposedly worked there for years but nobody remembers. Here's what we know for certain. She was Bane's apprentice, she was trained to carry forward the Rule of Two, and most importantly, she successfully killed her master to claim his title as Dark Lord of the Sith. The Jedi believed the Sith were completely destroyed after Bane's death, having no idea that Zannah had escaped their notice entirely. This is the beauty of Bane's system in action. By limiting the Sith to just 2 members, they became virtually invisible to their enemies. While the Jedi celebrated their victory, Zannah was out there, very much alive, and very much plotting. Canon confirms that Zannah took on her own apprentice to continue the Rule of Two, but the identity of this apprentice and the details of their relationship remain shrouded in mystery. What we do know is that she succeeded in perpetuating Bane's grand plan, keeping the Sith hidden while they grew in power and influence. Think about the pressure Zannah must have been under. She wasn't just carrying on a tradition, she was essentially beta testing Bane's entire system. She had to prove that the Rule of Two could actually work beyond its creator. No pressure, right? Just the entire future of the Sith Order resting on your shoulders. The fact that the Sith eventually succeeded in destroying the Jedi Order and conquering the galaxy proves that whatever Zannah did, she did it right. Zannah's successful assassination of Bane marked a crucial turning point in Sith history. This wasn't just another power grab. It was the first validation of Bane's philosophy. By defeating her master at his peak, or at least close enough to it, Zannah proved that the Rule of Two could create increasingly powerful Sith Lords. She demonstrated that the apprentice could surpass the master, not through numbers or trickery, but through superior strength and cunning. The transition from Bane to Zannah also established crucial precedents for future Sith. How do you maintain absolute secrecy while also accumulating the resources needed to eventually overthrow a galactic government? How do you train an apprentice who you know will eventually try to kill you? Zannah had to figure all of this out without a handbook or centuries of tradition to guide her. She was essentially writing the playbook that future Sith Lords would follow. Her reign as Dark Lord also coincided with a critical period in galactic history. The Republic was entering what would be remembered as a golden age of peace, completely unaware that the Sith had survived. This complacency would prove to be the Jedi's greatest weakness. While they grew comfortable and perhaps even stagnant in their traditions, the Sith were evolving, adapting, and growing stronger with each generation. Zannah's ability to remain completely hidden while laying the groundwork for future Sith operations was perhaps her greatest achievement. What's particularly intriguing about Zannah is what we don't know. Canon has deliberately kept her story vague, perhaps saving it for future exploration. Did she have multiple apprentices before finding the right successor? How long did she rule as Dark Lord? What specific contributions did she make to the Sith grand plan? These unanswered questions make her one of the most mysterious figures in Star Wars canon. Number 3. Tenebrous to Plagueis. Now we jump forward through the shadows to a Sith Lord whose very existence in canon is like a ghost story, mentioned in whispers but rarely seen. Darth Tenebrous, the master who trained Darth Plagueis, represents the Sith Order on the verge of achieving their millennium-long goal. Canon confirms Tenebrous existed through some fascinating but subtle references. The Rise of Skywalker Visual Dictionary reveals that Palpatine's 26th Legion of Sith Eternal Forces was named after him, placing him among ancient Sith Lords considered significant enough to be remembered by the cultists on Exegol. Even more intriguingly, some sources suggest he may have been involved in designing technological terrors, possibly even contributing to the creation of Darth Maul's ship, the Scimitar. Think of him as the Sith Order's head of R&D, combining dark side mastery with scientific innovation. What makes Tenebrous fascinating is that he chose Plagueis as his apprentice, setting in motion the final phase of the Sith Grand Plan. This wasn't just another transfer of power. This was the Sith Order positioning itself for the endgame. Tenebrous must have seen something special in Plagueis, perhaps recognizing his obsession with manipulating life itself as the key to ultimate victory. The relationship between Tenebrous and Plagueis represents the Sith at their most calculating. These weren't warriors charging into battle. They were scientists, philosophers, and manipulators working from the shadows. By the time Plagueis killed Tenebrous, as is the way of the Sith, the pieces were already in place for the Republic's destruction. Tenebrous had done his job. He'd created a monster capable of creating an even greater monster. The fact that Tenebrous potentially designed the Scimitar speaks volumes about his approach to Sith lordship. This wasn't just a cool ship, it was a symbol of how the Sith had evolved. The Scimitar was a stealth vessel, designed for infiltration and assassination rather than open warfare. It could slip past Republic sensors, deliver its deadly cargo, in this case Darth Maul, and vanish without a trace. This perfectly embodied the Sith strategy under the rule of two: strike from the shadows, sow chaos, and disappear before anyone realizes what happened. Tenebrous also represents a crucial bridge between the ancient Sith and the modern era. He was far enough removed from Bane's time that the Sith had fully embraced their hidden existence, but close enough to the Clone Wars that his actions had direct consequences for the galaxy. His training of Plagueis introduced scientific methodology to Sith teachings, moving beyond pure force philosophy into experimentation with the very building blocks of light. Consider the timing. Tenebrous likely lived during an era when the Republic was at its most complacent. The Sith had been extinct for centuries, the Jedi were revered peacekeepers, and the galaxy enjoyed unprecedented prosperity. It would have been tempting for a Sith Lord to reveal himself, to claim power through force. But Tenebrous, true to Bane's vision, remained hidden. He understood that patience was the ultimate weapon. His influence on Plagueis cannot be overstated. The obsession with cheating death, the scientific approach to the Force, the careful manipulation of midi-chlorians, these ideas likely originated with or were refined by Tenebrous. When Palpatine later spoke of Plagueis' abilities to Anakin, he was really describing a legacy that stretched back through Tenebrous and beyond. Each Sith Lord built upon their master's work, adding new layers to the grand design that would culminate in the fall of the Republic. Ready to dive deeper into the dark side? Hit that subscribe button faster than Palpatine executed Order 66 and ring the notification bell to join our Sith apprenticeship program. Trust us, our training methods involve significantly less Force lightning than the real thing. Number 4. Plagueis to Sidious. The relationship between Plagueis and his apprentice Sidious is perhaps the most consequential in all of Sith history. Here we have the Sith Lord, whose story became the galaxy's most effective manipulation tool when Palpatine used it to seduce Anakin to the dark side. Canon confirms that Plagueis was a powerful Sith Lord obsessed with cheating death and manipulating life itself. According to Palpatine's account, and let's face it, he's not exactly a reliable narrator, Plagueis was so powerful he could use the Force to influence the midi-chlorians to create life and prevent people from dying. Basically, he was playing God with the Force like it was his personal chemistry set. His experiments with immortality and life manipulation would later influence Sidious's own obsession with cheating death. The beautiful irony that canon confirms: Plagueis, who spent his entire life trying to prevent death, couldn't prevent his own. Sidious murdered him in his sleep, though exactly when this happened remains deliberately vague in canon. Some sources suggest it was around the time of the Phantom Menace, making Sidious's sympathy for Anakin's fears about losing Padme particularly twisted. Plagueis represents the Sith at their most scientifically ambitious. While previous Sith Lords focused on political manipulation or martial prowess, Plagueis tried to hack the Force itself. His legacy lived on not just through Sidious, but through the techniques his apprentice would later use to literally return from the dead in The Rise of Skywalker. Turns out Teacher's lessons stuck, even if Teacher didn't. What makes the Plagueis-Sidious relationship particularly fascinating is how it represented a fundamental shift in Sith methodology. Plagueis wasn't just teaching his apprentice about the dark side, he was sharing genuine scientific breakthroughs, the ability to influence midi-chlorians, to potentially create or save life. These weren't just force powers, but the result of systematic experimentation. Sidious inherited not just Sith teachings, but a laboratory's worth of dark knowledge. The timing of Plagueis' death adds layers of dramatic irony to the prequel trilogy. If Sidious killed his master around the time of the Phantom Menace, it means he was actively orchestrating the Naboo crisis while simultaneously planning, or having just committed, the murder of his mentor. When young Anakin Skywalker was brought before the Senate, Sidious was potentially looking at him as not just a future apprentice, but as a possible result of his late master's experiments with creating life through the Force. Consider how Sidious weaponized his master's story years later. When he told Anakin the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise, he was essentially confessing to murder while using that confession as a recruitment tool. He could save others from death, but not himself. Sidious delivered this line knowing he was the reason Plagueis couldn't save himself. It's manipulation layered upon manipulation, a perfect example of Sith cunning. The scientific legacy of Plagueis also explains much about Sidious's later actions. His creation of Snoke, his ability to transfer his consciousness to a clone body on Exegol, his massive cloning operations, all of these stem from the foundations Plagueis laid. Where Plagueis theorized, Sidious actualized. Where Plagueis experimented, Sidious perfected. The rule of two ensured that each generation of Sith built upon the last, and nowhere is this clearer than in the progression from Plagueis' research to Sidious's implementation. Number 5. Sidious to Maul Dooku. If Darth Sidious's approach to apprentices were a relationship status, it would be, it's complicated. Unlike his predecessors who generally stuck to one apprentice at a time, following that whole rule of two thing, Sidious treated apprentices like disposable tools, always keeping a spare or shopping for an upgrade. First up was Darth Maul, taken from his mother on Dathomir when he was just a child. Canon confirms Maul was trained from infancy to be the perfect Sith weapon, all aggression and acrobatics, with those fancy double-bladed lightsaber moves that launched 1,000 toy sales. But here's the thing. Sidious never taught him the finer points of Sith philosophy or political manipulation. Maul was never meant to be a true successor, just a blunt instrument to reveal the Sith's return. Getting bisected by Obi-Wan on Naboo was probably earlier than planned, but Sidious had already been shopping for replacements. Count Dooku, aka Darth Tyrannus, was everything Maul wasn't. Sophisticated, politically savvy, and with a beard that screamed, distinguished evil. A former Jedi Master who became disillusioned with the Order, Dooku was the perfect public face for the separatist movement. The catch? He genuinely thought he was Sidious's partner in reshaping the galaxy. The shock on his face when Palpatine ordered Anakin to execute him in Revenge of the Sith said it all. He'd been played harder than a Daedric board. But even while training Dooku, Sidious had his eyes on the real prize, Anakin Skywalker, the Chosen One himself. Canon shows us that Sidious played a 13-year-long game, befriending young Anakin, becoming his confidant, and slowly poisoning his relationship with the Jedi Order. When he finally revealed himself as the Sith Lord, he used Anakin's fear of losing Padme, ironically offering the secrets he claimed to have learned from Plagueis, to turn him to the dark side. The way Sidious handled multiple apprentices reveals his true genius and complete disregard for Sith tradition. While the rule of two technically mandated only 2 Sith at a time, Sidious found loopholes and exploited them ruthlessly. Maul was officially his apprentice, but was he really trained as a Sith Lord, or just as an assassin who happened to use the dark side? The distinction matters because it shows how Sidious bent the rules without technically breaking them. With Dooku, Sidious played an even more complex game. Here was a former Jedi Master, someone who understood the Order's weaknesses intimately. Dooku brought legitimacy to the separatist cause. He wasn't some mysterious, shadowy figure, but a respected former Jedi who could articulate genuine grievances against the Republic. Sidious used Dooku's idealism against him, letting him believe they were partners in creating a better galaxy when, in reality, Dooku was just another pawn to be sacrificed. The timeline of these apprenticeships is particularly revealing. Sidious was training Maul while still serving as Plagueis' apprentice, a technical violation of the Rule of Two, then seamlessly transitioned to Dooku after Maul's apparent death, all while grooming Anakin for over a decade. This wasn't just multitasking, it was a complete reimagining of how the Rule of Two could function in practice. What's particularly cold-blooded about Sidious's treatment of these apprentices is how specifically he tailored their training to their purpose. Maul received just enough training to be a terrifying warrior, but not enough to be a true threat. Dooku was given enough authority to lead the Separatists, but was never taught the deepest Sith secrets. Each apprentice was custom designed for their role in Sidious's grand plan, then discarded when that role was complete. It's resource management at its most ruthless. Number 6. Sidious to Vader. Darth Vader represents both the culmination and corruption of the Rule of Two. As Sidious's final apprentice, Vader was supposed to be the ultimate Sith Lord, but his defeat on Mustafar left him diminished. Still immensely powerful, but never quite what he could have been. It's like ordering a Death Star and getting one with an exposed thermal exhaust port. For over 2 decades, Vader served as the Emperor's enforcer, hunting Jedi survivors, crushing rebellions, and generally being the galaxy's worst HR representative. But here's what makes Vader fascinating within the Rule of Two framework. Both Master and Apprentice were constantly plotting against each other, yet neither could quite pull the trigger. Sidious was perpetually shopping for replacements. Canon shows him grooming the Inquisitors, considering various dark side adepts, and ultimately setting his sights on Luke Skywalker. When Luke refused to kill his father and take his place, Sidious tried to destroy him, classic Sith management style. Vader, meanwhile, had his own plans. When he discovered Luke was his son, Vader's pitch evolved from serving the Emperor to "Join me, and we can rule the galaxy as father and son." He wanted to overthrow Sidious not for power alone, but to create his own twisted version of family bonding. The ultimate irony of the Rule of Two came at Endor. The system designed to make the Sith stronger through betrayal was destroyed by its opposite, love and redemption. When Vader saw his son being tortured, Anakin Skywalker returned and yeeted his master down a reactor shaft, ending the Banite Sith line that had endured for a millennium. Think about it. Bane created the Rule of Two to prevent the Sith from destroying themselves through chaotic infighting. It ended when a Sith destroyed himself and his master through an act of selfless love. The system that was supposed to ensure Sith supremacy through pure selfishness was undone by the most selfless act imaginable. If Bane's spirit on Moraband could see that, he'd probably be screaming louder than when Yoda dismissed him as an illusion. The Vader-Sidious relationship was fundamentally different from any previous Sith pairing under the Rule of Two. Previous apprentices plotted against their masters out of ambition, seeking greater power for themselves. Vader's motivations were far more complex. Yes, he wanted power, but he also carried deep self-loathing, regret, and a desperate need to justify his fall to the dark side. His offer to Luke wasn't just about overthrowing the Emperor, it was about finding meaning in his own tragedy. Sidious, for his part, seemed almost disappointed in Vader. The apprentice he'd spent over a decade grooming, the chosen one who was supposed to be the most powerful Force user ever, was now trapped in a life support suit, his potential forever limited. Canon materials suggest Sidious immediately began looking for ways to replace Vader, even as he relied on him as his primary enforcer. It was a relationship built on mutual necessity rather than the traditional Sith bond of master and apprentice. The 23 years between Revenge of the Sith and Return of the Jedi saw this dysfunctional relationship play out across the galaxy. Vader couldn't challenge Sidious directly. His suit was specifically designed with weaknesses to Force lightning. Sidious couldn't easily replace Vader. Finding another Force user of sufficient power and moldability was nearly impossible with the Jedi extinct. They were stuck with each other, two Sith Lords bound by hatred, necessity, and the traditions of an order that had ruled from the shadows for a millennium. The introduction of Luke Skywalker changed everything. Suddenly, both Sith Lords saw an opportunity. For Sidious, Luke represented the apprentice Vader should have been: young, powerful, and potentially corruptible. For Vader, Luke represented something else entirely: redemption, legacy, and perhaps a chance to overthrow the Emperor not for power, but for love. When Vader made his choice on the Death Star 2, saving Luke and destroying Sidious, he didn't just end his own life, he ended the Sith Order that had persisted for 1,000 years. The Rule of Two shaped 1,000 years of galactic history, from the shadows of the unknown Sith Lords to the height of the Empire. Each confirmed master-apprentice pair added their own flavor to this tradition of betrayal. Bane's revolutionary vision, Zannah's successful succession, the mysterious Sith of the lost millennium perfecting their infiltration, Tenebrous's technological innovation, Plagueis' scientific ambitions, Sidious's unprecedented manipulation, and finally, Vader's redemptive sacrifice. What started as a survival mechanism for two Sith became the blueprint for galactic domination, only to be destroyed by the one thing the Sith never accounted for in their grand plan: a father's love for his son. The rule of two succeeded beyond Bane's wildest dreams, placing a Sith Lord on the galactic throne, and then failed, because it couldn't account for the possibility that a Sith might choose love over power. There you have it, the complete canonical history of the Rule of Two's known practitioners. If you enjoyed this deep dive into confirmed Sith history, smash that like button like Vader smashed the Emperor's plans at Endor. Subscribe for more Star Wars lore, and remember, always let the Wookiee win, and definitely don't trust anyone offering you unlimited power. There's always a catch.